I made Minato's knife with a 3D pen, and this is how it turned out. But to get there, I started here, tracing a photo on my laptop for a template. I taped the template down so it doesn't move while I trace it, and before I trace it, I need tracing paper so the filament doesn't stick to the paper. And since I'm making this knife in a different way, I'll need a lot of filament. To start Minato's knife, I begin making the frame. I know absolutely nothing about Naruto, but there's a kid who knows I make stuff with a 3D pen, and he's been asking me for a while, so it's a gift for him. I never made anything from that show, but I think I should try to make a Luca, the character I named my journal after. I thought I was done here, but for some reason I didn't connect these parts, so let me fix that. Here's the frame. This kunai ended up being around 10 inches long. To fill in this frame, I'll be stacking filament and not making the hollow. This will take way longer, but it will make the kunai stronger. I make 2 rectangles, half the width of the handle to be my guide as to how much I have to fill in. The next step was attaching them to the frame, and the frame to the rectangles. This is the first time I've made a knife this way. I usually take the shorter route, well, because it's shorter, but I've been trying to improve my 3D pen skills, and I'm happy with how this turned out. Now for the time-consuming part, filling in the whole thing with filament. This is in 6x speed. This took so long, but it was worth it. I made sure to fill in the blade at a slope. Keeping these details in mind while filling in helps out a ton later. Less sanding, especially if you don't have any electrical tools. For the pommel, yes, I googled what the end of a kunai is called because I had no idea what the name was. I just let the filament run because this area is really small. Maybe I should have made a smaller knife. Going into this kunai, I knew the blade was going to be the most difficult part for me, so I took this incredibly slow, which took even longer, but it looks so good. To make sure everything stays even, I divided the kunai into 4 parts, and when everything was filled in, it tripled in weight. This was a good sign because I'm eventually going to grind the majority of it away, but before that, smoothing. This is a butane soldering iron, but for some reason it wasn't getting hot enough to use for this, so I ended up switching back to my regular soldering iron and finishing the job. This is smaller, so it will take longer, but it's hotter. I was worried my Clover mini iron, which is way bigger than this, would melt too much filament away. This kunai has these sides in the corner, so I made sure to add them on, and this was very hard. Then I was left with a giant kunai that I can grind down endlessly to create the perfect shape. This would have been impossible if I didn't stack the filament the way I did. This also took a long time, but what made it worse is my sanding bits kept breaking. They were only $8. Were the more expensive ones probably better? Yes. Was I paying that much for sanding bits? I don't think so. It took a long time and even more bits, but I got to a point where I felt pretty good about moving on. Now the next part is more sanding, but this time I get to use my hands instead of a power tool. Yay. I also realized nail files are way better than sanding sticks. The filament comes off in a powder form and leaves the project so smooth. I forgot how many hours I'm into this project at this point, but I didn't forget how long it took to clean this mess up. I sat down for hours sanding this project and it felt like it took days to clean. Before I add spackle paste to fill in the gaps, first I remove any of the remaining dust with a lighter. I wasn't happy with the texture of the handle and the cracks that I made. The blade also has dips in it. Since I haven't cleaned the dust off my table and I didn't want to create a bigger mess, I covered it and sanded it with spackle paste outside. I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. I'm back, my table is clean, and I attempted to draw the words on the blade, and you can see it clearly took me a couple tries. Since this is for a kid, I have the perfect excuse for the blade not being sharp. I brought back out the soldering iron to make the words, and I messed up centering a couple. It doesn't look that bad, but I wish I was more careful, so be careful when you do this part. This is how it looked before I removed the excess filament and after. You can see the words I messed up and didn't center, but it's not the end of the world. Now it's time for painting, and I primed it white. For the blade, I used this pearl black metallic paint. Then I mixed that pearl black with white and went over the edges. I painted the handle brown, and I did try to match the shade from the picture. Then of course for the tiny words, I used a tiny brush, and of course I waited until the brown paint I mixed dried, so I couldn't color match my fixes because I messed up here a lot, but it's okay. This is the final product, and I am incredibly happy. The first knife I made years ago doesn't compare to this. I hope I can continue to improve.